kids think teachers don't have a life without them. They can't imagine what the teachers do when the kids aren't there. When you're really little, you figure the teacher owns the classroom. It's her room, and that's where she lives. Right? In kindergarten, she rolls your rug out, and she sleeps on your rug when you go home. That's where they live. It's her classroom. And even when you get older, you still figure it's kind of like that. Because in the summer, for instance, you figure they probably just stay there in the school waiting for you to come back. They don't know what to do without you. And it makes sense if you think about it, because at the end of the school year, all right, school ends at Thursday, 11 o'clock. There's always that little extra half day there. We don't know why. If you ask anyone, they say it's a state law. It's because 2.5 hours that day, we just might cover the material we hadn't covered yet, right? All right? So that last day, 11 o'clock, the teacher releases you, and she says, "Goodbye, kids," and she stands at her classroom door and says goodbye to you. And you go out, and you go out of school, and you get on the bus, or your mom or dad picks you up, and you go home. And then you have vacation, and you go swimming, and you go to camp, and you go to your grandparents, and you have a wonderful time for all these months. And then you come back at the end of those 3 months, and you walk in the door to your new classroom on the other side of the hall, but there she is, standing at the same, "Hi, she's been there the whole time in suspended animation, just waiting for your return." What could she possibly do without you? And I thought that's the way things were too, until the summer after 4th grade. Summer after 4th grade, I found out differently because Mrs. Marshall's dumb baby came early. Mrs. Marshall had the whole thing planned. She was my 4th grade teacher, and I was very fond of her. She was kind but firm, and I liked her a lot, and she had the whole thing planned. She was going to stand at the door 11 o'clock on Thursday and say goodbye to us. She was going to go home. She was going to have a long weekend. She was going to go into the hospital on that next Monday, deliver her baby, have 3 months off, be back there standing at the door, and no one would know the difference. But the dumb baby came early. What was worse about that, what was bad about that for me, was that she wasn't going to be there for the last week of school. I was looking forward to the last week of school with Mrs. Marshall because I loved the last week of school. As a matter of fact, as far as I was concerned in 4th grade, the last week of school was the only week that was really worth going to. Because the teachers had given up, right? It was over. Right? The standardized tests were done. It was just too hot. They were already taking things down, deconstructing the school. And so we did things that were fun in school. We had extra recesses. We had class outside. Or we played hangman, or the teacher would say, "Oh, everybody who's having a birthday this summer, let's have one big birthday party." All week long. And it was going to be with Mrs. Marshall, who was already fun. I could hardly wait. So, imagine my horror when I walked in on Monday morning, the last week of school, and Mrs. Marshall was not at her desk. And what was worse was who was in her place. In her place was Mrs. Ammons, the long-term substitute teacher for Washington Township. I had seen her passing like a wraith through the halls before, but I never had her. Mrs. Ammons was kind of like, the Delta Force, the Rapid Deployment Force. No, she was brought in, or the Pinkertons or somebody. She was brought in to secure the perimeter after the natives had gotten restless. If a teacher had been driven to a nervous breakdown by her class in the middle of the year, they brought in Mrs. Ammons to pacify, to kind of restore order and discipline. And then a new teacher was introduced into the situation. She was the kind of teacher who would be walking down the hallway, and she'd hear some noise in the classroom. And noise really annoyed her. And the children might be out of their seats, and that was very disturbing to her, too. So she would just open the door of the classroom, and she'd say, "Excuse me, is there a problem in here?" And all the kids would go, "Ugh!" and they'd run to their seats. And so would the teacher. She was thin, she was gray, she was gaunt, she was severe. Just one look at her, and you know her skin hurt. And so there she was. I walked into the classroom, and there she was at Mrs. Marshall's desk, and she was already grading papers. She found papers to grade. And I said, "Where's Mrs. Marshall?" And she looked up, and she said, "She had her baby. Do your morning work." But when's she coming back? "She won't be back till next year. Now do your morning work." But I'm not going to be in this class next year. She looked at me and she said, you might. You get to work. And I walked across the room, and all the heads, the kids were already lowered. It was like this high-pressure area just forced itself down upon the kids' heads. We were looking at each other. How could this possibly have happened to us on the last week of school? The classroom was silent, just the scribbling of pencils on paper. Now, I got off on the wrong foot with Mrs. Ammons almost immediately. I have a long history of being misunderstood by authority. And I genuinely mean that. They always misunderstand what I say. And the first time we had to line up for lunch, we lined up. And Mrs. Ammons watched us. She said, oh, boys and girls, that's not nearly good enough. Get back there and try it again. So we went back to our desks. She said, try it again. We got up. She said, I don't like that either. Get back there and try it again. So we tried it again. She said, children, I don't care if we learn anything else this week. We are going to learn how to line up, because it's an important life skill if you think about it. Don't you hate it when you see some guy wandering around, doesn't know how to get in the movie line? It's just a horrible thing, right? About the 16th or 17th time, I realized that we're not going to have lunch today. We're just going to learn how to line up. I really began to have some pity for this woman, that she had to teach these dumb fourth graders how to line up. So the 19th time, back to my seat, I say sotto voce, stage whisper, loud enough so she can hear, boy, I'm really glad we're learning this today. She misunderstood me. I felt sorry for her. And it was horrible. All week long, everybody, all the other classes were laughing at us. We said, when can we have fun? And she said, children, listen to me. School ends at 11 o'clock on Thursday. You may have fun after that. You get it? Fun, school, She found new ways to torture us. You know, why can't we do anything? We couldn't get away from her. Except, unless you were a boy. And then you could, for brief periods of time. You could get away from her during restroom break. We had 3 restroom breaks a day. 3 a day, one at 10:30 in the morning, one right before lunch, and one about 1:15 in the afternoon. And we would line up as well as we could, and she would lead us down the hallway, and the girls would file into the girls' room, and the boys would file into the boys' room, and the door would close, and we would be free. Because Mrs. Ammons was a girl, apparently. And she couldn't come in there. Now, in order to understand what happened there, let me try to recreate the geography of the 4th grade boys' bathroom. For those of you who have never been in, or maybe you have forgotten, okay? You walk in the door. Let's say this is the door right here, okay? You walk in the door, and right as you walk in, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sinks right there, okay? And there are mirrors over the sinks. Actually, it's not mirrors. It's just polished steel. You really can't see your face. All you just see is the outline of your head, right? No wonder kids have stuff on their face. Anyway, and then there would be a paper towel dispenser right by the door. And if you took an immediate right-hand turn, there were 3 stand-up urinals, okay? And then behind them were sit-down toilets with doors. There are doors in the elementary school bathrooms, not in the high school bathrooms. We take the doors away because we trust them, all right? And then there's a big high window over there. Okay, so now, the first boy who walked into the boys' room had a job. His job was to open the door and just turn on all the faucets right away. Make sure the water worked. And then the second boy would stand at his sentry position by the paper towel dispenser and just hand out paper towels to the boys as they came in. And each boy would take a paper towel and just run it under the sinks. So they got it good and wet, and there were all sorts of possibilities once you had a wet towel. Right? You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yeah. You could squeeze it, you could throw it, you try to stick it up on the ceiling, and then some kids would just take sucks of water. Perry Lash, I don't know where Perry is today, but he had this special talent. He could just take one big suck of water, and the entire 3.5 minutes we were in the bathroom, he would just shoot out little jets, and he never ran out. 67, 68, 69, 70, he's probably still there today. 5,487,000. And Mrs. Ammons would be rapping on the door. Time, boys, right now, time. Come out right now, time. And finally, we would walk out. And she'd say, no snickering. We didn't know what that was. We thought it was a candy bar. So we loved going into the bathroom. Now, that first afternoon restroom break, that Monday, I made a discovery which kind of launched me into the pantheon of fourth grade boys. I was standing back watching the water play, and I noticed that the first stall door was open, and I had this sudden intuitive insight about something that might be possible. So I said, hey, you guys, watch. So I walked in there, and I pulled the door shut behind me, and I climbed up on top of the toilet like this toilet seat with my little fourth grade head over the top of the stall like this. I said, you guys watch. And they all stopped and looked at me. I said, watch. I balanced on one foot, and I reached out for the plunger. And I pushed down on the plunger. And I went, ah! Yeah. Isn't that beautiful? You get the picture. It looked exactly like I had been sucked up by the toilet. What else could a fourth grade boy want? And you know how fourth grade boys are. They're also competitive. Oh man, I can do it better. Watch me. Two of them at a time. Right? And Mrs. Ammons, she's over pounding on the door. Time, boys, right now. We filed out. We couldn't wait for restroom break. All the repression we were suffering under, it just made it all the more glorious, that kind of constricted freedom within the boys' bathroom. All week long, she found new ways to torture us. She rummaged through the school and deep in the bowels of some supply closet. She found these old Basil readers. But yeah. And you know those books that have been lost in school for a long time, when you open them up and the smell of suffering just kind of lifts up in you. And we had to read these stories, I still remember one of the stories we read. Jimmy's birthday surprise. Do you know what Jimmy's birthday surprise was? I'm going to tell you. He got new dress shoes. Yeah, and he was excited about it. Oh, mother, he exclaimed, vocabulary word. Just what I've always wanted. Oh, what a loser. The climax of the story was when he put the thank you note in the mailbox. I turned to the last page to see if I got hit by a truck or something on the way home. All week long, when can we have fun? She'd say, school ends at 11 o'clock on Thursday. You may have fun then. Then, not now. Can we please have fun? And so finally, Wednesday morning, she said, all right, class, listen to me. If you are good today, we'll play a game at the end of the day. No, I don't want to hear any more about it. So all day long, we were as good as we could be. But then the school day's almost over. And some kid says, Mrs. Ammons, where's our game? What about our game? She said, oh, all right. She goes up to the board. She starts to write up math problems on the board. Well, that's going the wrong way. And then she says, all right, we'll have math relay races. Oh, for Pete's sake, do you remember those? You know, the first kid in line, the first kid in the row does the problem, runs back and tags the next kid, and the next kid goes up. The only thing that was fun about that was tripping the kids in the other line. When the third kid goes down, she says, there's no running, there's no tripping. I said, what's the point? She looked at me. She said, can we have class outside? You'll throw grass at each other. I said, that's the point. She glared at me. All week long, we suffered wandering through the purgatory of her teaching. Till finally, the last day of school, Thursday morning. There's only 2.5 hours left in the whole school year. And we get to school and other teachers are meeting their children at the front door saying, don't go in there. There's nothing left to learn. Let's just go to the playground. There's nothing on the walls of the school. It's this barren, empty shell. And we walk into class and Mrs. Ammons has new vocabulary words on the board. She's shushing us and the windows are opened up and kids from outside are sticking their heads in and laughing at us. She's shushing us. She's got silent work all morning long, silent work. Finally, about 10:15, only 45 minutes left in the school year, the boys start to look at each other. We all realize at the same moment, hey, we're going to get one more restroom break. And it's gonna be the mother of all restroom breaks. But 10:30 comes and goes, and Mrs. Ammons is still up there grading papers. Where did she find the papers? She must have wandered around the school, papers to grade, papers to grade. It's 10:35, some boy says, Mrs. Ammons, what about restroom break? She looks up and she says, oh, surely you don't need to go. School's almost done. All the boys, as one, said, we've got to go! We have to go! Please, we have to go! And the girls all turned and looked at us like that. As a matter of fact, when I think about it, I think that was the first time they looked at us like that. As far as I can determine, it hasn't ended since. What is wrong with you? It's how we are. We can't change. And for some reason, Mrs. Ammons relents. She says, line up. We knew how to do that. It's all we learned all week long. And we're walking down the hallway, and the girls are going, what's the matter? We gotta go, we gotta go. And the girls file into their room, and we go into our room, and the door closes, and the floodgates open. Anything that has water to do with it, we're turning it, and we find the spigot. How do we not notice the spigot for the custodian to fill up the buckets? We just turned it on. The water began to fill up from underneath, and kids are sliding across. This moisture in the air, the sunlight's beaming down, casting rainbows over the urinals. One by one, the kids are going into the toilet going, pwah, pwah. And Mrs. Ammons immediately pounding on the door. Time, boys, time, right now, pwah, two at a time, pwah. She says, right now. Somebody says, we gotta go. I said, you guys, one more, okay? Last one of the school year, okay? One more. I get in there. I'm not proud of this, but I was the best. Something about my performance, I don't know. I said, you guys, last one of the year, watch. Okay, watch. I balance one foot and I reach for the plunger. Now, there had been a lot of activity around that toilet seat. None for its intended purpose, you understand. And this was not the era of low flush toilets. This was the era of high flush toilets, 27 gallons of flush. Like Old Faithful, shooting up right out of the middle of the bowl. And it was only natural that some of the water should just spray on the seat. So that seat was, shall we say, moist. And so when I reached down for the plunger with my left foot, my right foot began to slip slowly, inexorably, headed towards the center of the bowl. And I got the plunger down, and I reached back with my left foot, and my left foot fell in, and my right foot fell in, and I went, because I thought I really was being sucked up by the toilet. Because when you're little, you think, I could fit in there. It's dark, it looks small, but I think I can fit in there. My big brother could stick my head down there and they never get me out. So there I was, and it got dead quiet in the room because actually I was being sucked up by the toilet. But there I was standing, looking down, and the water swirling around my feet. And I realized I can't fit, it's okay. So I said, you guys, it's okay, it's really okay, but it was still quiet. And I turned to climb out of the toilet. And there she was. Wasn't that illegal? And I can still see her to this day, framed by the walls of that toilet stall, her arms folded, looking at me. Looking at me saying, what do you think you're doing? What could I say? I said, I'm stuck in the toilet. Well, she got me unstuck fast. She yanked me right out of there, out of the door, down the hallway, leaving a trail of toilet water for the custodian to clean up that summer. She had a hold of my little skinny arm and dragged me down, and she didn't finish sentence all the way down the hallway. If you think, in all my, I have been teaching, this is the last time. When we get down there, I'm going to call it, really no. She yanked me up in front of the office desk. She said, where's Mr. Olenek? That was the vice principal in charge of discipline. The secretary jumped up. She said, I don't know. She said, you get him down here right now. 7 sentences, 7 words. You get him down here right now. She jumped the microphone. Mr. Olenek, please come down to the office. Well, Mr. Olenek, please come down to the office. She's looking at me. Children, you ever heard that phrase, spitting bullets? They can. She was spitting bullets. She said, where is he? And the secretary said, I don't know. And we turned and we saw Mr. Olenek trundling down the hall, coming from the primary wing. And I thought, he's going to kill me. He's going to put me in the closet where he puts the children he doesn't like. Just leave me there over the summer and my parents won't mind. They didn't know what to do with me anyway. She yanks me in front of her. She says, Mr. Olenek, and the bell rang. The last bell of school or the first bell of summer. And there was just this moment of glorious silence as the echoing of the bell ringing fades off down the cinder block hallways, linoleum on the floors. And then, as if the universe is hanging suspended, like the earth, the earth at solstice, balancing there, which way to turn. And it decides. The doors of the classrooms fling open. Matter of fact, with such force, they hit against the walls and they close again. And then they open, and then they come. They pour into the hallways. Tens, dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions of children pouring down the hallway, running, screaming, throwing papers up into the air. They're settling back down. The children are running. The teachers are saying, no running. And the kids are going, yes, running. Yes to running and no to you. Out the door, this river of life, of hope, of liberty, out the door, down the walk, onto the bus, and I felt it too. I felt it too, wrenching something from deep inside me, some hope yet unrealized. I looked up at Mrs. Ammons, and she looked down at me, and there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't identify, something I could not name, some moment, something, some trace of hesitation or doubt, and I felt her grip loosen. And I was gone. I was gone. Maybe my feet moved, or maybe I was just picked up by the river of life streaming out the door, down the walk, onto bus 150, all the way, just slammed into the back seat. Kids said, what happened? I said, I got away. They said, get down. They said, stay down, Bill. And they're looking, and I'm peering over the window, waiting for Mrs. Ammons to come out with Mr. Olenek and Mr. Koppel, the principal, and Mr. Licklight, the superintendent, and the chief of police, and the mayor. But no, Mr. Anderson gets on the bus. He closes the door. He puts the bus in gear around the circle of the school, onto the street, free at last, free at last. Great God Almighty, free at last. Do you remember what that feels like? Do you remember? You never get that feeling again. That feeling of freedom is something you carry with you your whole life, so you understand it when somebody mentions it. That's where it comes from. I say to kids, school ends every June, but being an adult, I'm telling you, man, it just goes on and on and on. I got back home, and I walked in the door very carefully, wondering if there had been a phone call. There had been before. But I heard my mom in the kitchen. She said, are you home? I said, uh-huh. She said, school's done. And I thought, yes, it is. And I immediately got on my bike and rode around the neighborhood. That's the first thing you do. It's like, we're free. What should we do? Let's get on the bike and ride around. And we would congregate there, and people would say, do you hear what happened to Bill? I said, Bill, tell him. Bill got away from Mrs. Ammons. And they said, tell it. And I told it, and I told it, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, look where it is today. And I was a hero, the kid who had gotten away from Mrs. Ammons. And I took all that, but I wasn't quite sure if I was a hero, because I wasn't sure if I'd gotten away or she let me go, because I remembered that look in her eyes, and I found out. Towards the end of the summer, my mom picked me up from the public pool, around 4 o'clock, 4:30 or so. My mom used to just drop me off at 10 and pick me up at 4. And we were driving home, and I pestered her and bothered her until she said, okay, and she stopped at the Dairy Queen. Kids never give up. You never know. They might just give up sometimes. It's worth hanging in there, right? And she gave me a quarter, and I was standing on the pavement. I was standing on the yellow parking line trying to keep my feet from burning up, and the line was 6 or 7 deep, and I heard someone say, I'd like a vanilla cone, please. It was Mrs. Ammons. What was she doing out? She was wearing shorts. She shouldn't wear shorts. She was wearing those white camp sneakers, the Keds with a little blue tag on the back. She had a pair of sneakers. She turned with the ice cream cone and she saw me, and there was no getting away. I stood in line, but she'd see me. She walked down the row of people waiting for ice cream on that hot summer day, and she stopped right beside me, and she looked at me. She licked the cone. She said, hello, William. I looked up at her, looked for my mom. My mom was smiling and waving. She's completely misunderstanding the situation. She said, are you having a good summer? Uh-huh. And she licked her cone again. She looked at me and she said, I know you were sick and tired of me, but not as sick and tired as I was of you. And even then, my 9-year-old brain could understand what she was saying. And so that's what I want to tell you, kids. When you get out for school, you go home and you think, oh my gosh, how will our teachers ever live without us? I don't want you to worry. I know they're going to be just fine. How